Wave if you can hear me. Nobody's waving. Oh, yeah, we've got one. We've got a wave. Come on, Jacqueline, give us a wave. She is. You made Andrew scared then, Jacqueline, because you weren't responding and he thought you couldn't hear me. That's your good deed of the day done. Are we all there? Yeah? Yes, so I've just been upstairs and spoken to Diane, and we've got you a code for this class, which is Q, capital Q for Queen, bless her, capital B for bird, for B, tins, and that will give you, TINS, that will give you 50% off the tins on the Highlight Crafts website. And when I show you what I'm going to show you at the end of this class, you'll want more tins. So that's a perfect time to do that. The other thing that I'd like to tell you is that from Friday, we are having a Cadence weekend where there will be discounts for that, because I'm going to use Cadence in this class. So please don't buy it today, wait until we've got the discount on it for you over the weekend. So keep an eye out for that as well. So what I wanted to do in this class is do a few of the techniques that we did while we were on air, and then do a frame. So I'm going to kind of bounce back between one or two other things, and then we're going to do an art journal page if we've got time as well. So I'm going to bounce in between, because I'm going to do a bit of painting and then put it to one side and then come back to it and that kind of thing. So it's going to be a very technique-based workshop, which I think will be nice with this. So I've got everything ready. So the first product I just want to talk to you briefly about is the cut and use foam from Cadence. This product and this paint, when we first went to Cadence on the first day, we had a big piece of MDF given to us and a piece of this foam and a black paint. And they went, right, we want you to cover. And it was a big piece like this. It was like a big circle. So, right, we want you to cover that in just black paint. Put some black paint on here, wiped over it, and it just covered in one. And Stephanie said to me at the end of the first day, bearing in mind that Cadence are absolute alchemists and come up with these amazing products, what is the product that you're most impressed with? And that was it today, on the first day. This is really cool. So I use it for using paint if I want to cover a bigger surface, or if I want to do something quite smooth. And then on the other side, it's got this kind of solid foam. This is great for stamping on. So if you want a little bit more give in your stamps, you can use the other side. It's also good for piecing into. So it's something that you're going to buy and you're going to use, but you're going to use it in lots of different ways, which is exciting. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to bring in this frame. Now, this was just a frame that I picked up in Tesco's. It wasn't expensive. Go to the range, somewhere like that, where B&M Bargains, Home, all those different bargain shops that we have now. And you can pick up some really inexpensive, nice little bits to decorate. So because this is a plastic, and it almost has like a coating on the top of it, I'm going to sand it back first. So I'm going to get a sanding block, just a piece of an emery board would do it, you know, a nail file, anything like that. But I'm just going to sand it back a little bit. And what this does, it's like when you're glossing your windowsills and your doors, and you're going over an old paint, you just sand it back and it gives it a key to hold on to, if you like. So don't need to go too mad with it, but just roughen that surface just to make sure that the paint actually adheres to it. Cadence do a plastic base coating that you can put on plastic first, but we haven't got it yet. It's still, I don't know whether it's been ordered or whether it's going to be ordered, but we will definitely be getting it in, which is great because you can pick up really inexpensive frames and some of them look really plasticky and horrible. But by the time you put a load of Cadence paint on, they look amazing. So I'm going to start this one and I'm looking at the colours that I have in my fairy herself. So if I just bring in one of the tins here, I've got browns, I've got almost like a very dark warm grey. There's a little bit of blue in some of the background papers as well. So I'm not aiming to cover this completely, so it's a solid colour, but I am going to add something a little bit more intense into it. And I'm going to use black because we're going to go over the top of this anyway with different products, but I just thought black is a good base. Anything that you put on black just pops. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of this Cadence hybrid acrylic. Now a hybrid acrylic works on multi-surfaces. It's one of the best paints. It was funny because a lot of my Cadence stuff has been at the office, and I've been working from home for the last couple of weeks. Alice, my little granddaughter, came for a sleepover on Friday night, and on Saturday went out and bought a load of ceramic stuff for her to paint. And I had a load of Pebeo paint, an Art Deco paint that I used. And actually, when she was putting it on there, you could see it was streaking. So I changed it to Cadence. I found the Cadence that I got at home, and the difference was like night and day. So I've got a little bit of this black paint on this sponge, and I'm just pushing it into the sponge. Okay, so I'm picking it up. And then I'm literally just going to go over and I'm going to dab it. So you can either swipe it like that, but I want a little bit of texture from it. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to use that sponge. And I'm not worrying about getting into every little corner and crevice. All I'm bothered about is just putting a layer down on here. And this will dry and be permanent. So you could go over it with a varnish if you wanted to, because if it's going to get handled a lot, then I would absolutely put a clear varnish over the top, and Cadence do one of those. Or you can just, you know, if it's just going to be a decoration that not many people are going to pick up, then just a layer of paint will be enough. So I'm just going in, I'm making sure I'm going on the inside of the frame as well. And I'm just turning my frame so that I can literally go along the edge like that, which is great. We'll get all this just covered, and then I'm going to leave it to go off for a minute or two, and we'll do something else in between. Right, a little bit more paint. Because these paints travel from Turkey, they will have an oil in them, some kind of resin or something that creates it permanent. So just give them a really good shake before you put a little bit out on your craft mat. And just put a small amount out, because you can always add it. You don't want to be wasting your paint. And I have to say, I've used a lot of different paints. In fact, it was funny because when we went over to Turkey, I didn't really know a lot about paint. Now I know loads about it because I've researched it. But when we were coming back on the plane, I said to Stephanie, what I'm going to do when I go home is buy a pot of the Annie Sloan paint and just do a, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. My words will come back to me in a minute. Bear with. Just do what's best, which paint is best, basically. And Stephanie just looked at me and she went, don't bother, because I'll tell you now that the Cadence paint's better. I was like, oh, okay. And that's not because we sell Cadence paint. That's because Stephanie's done a lot of work over the years with a lot of different interior designers and knows a lot about the paint. If there's anybody that knows about paint, it's Stephanie. So yeah, it is absolutely fabulous. And I know it's a little bit scary when you first start, because you end up with messy hands and yeah, like this. And it's all a bit like, but it's great fun once you get started. And now we've just done the USB for the stencils and all that kind of things coming into it now. I would absolutely encourage you to have a go with some of the Cadence stuff, because it really is good stuff. Right, I'm just going to very quickly blast this off. So bear with me while I just get my heat gun hot, just to kind of take off the liquid, if you like, just to start making it go a little bit matte, just so that I know that it's started to dry. And then we'll put it to one side and we'll do a technique that we did to do all the little cogs, etc., etc. So I am literally just drying this off. Now, talking about a heat gun, if you can get a heat gun that has 2 different settings, it's brilliant, because your lower setting will dry and your higher setting will melt. And that's how I use my heat gun. Rather than having 2 different ones, which is a pain in the neck, because you've constantly lost one and then the other one blows all the powder away and one doesn't blow it enough. And yeah, just if you can get one that's got dual speed, then that's fabulous. So I'm just literally letting that go a little bit. It started to go matte now, but how well has that covered that frame? You know, if I'd gone right in here with all the little stencil brush and got right into all those little crevices, you would never know that that was blue originally. And I love stuff like that because you can go out and, you know, go into the charity shops and buy frames. Even if you don't like the picture, just look at the frame. And even if you don't like the frame, you know, you're going to change it, which is really cool. So I'm going to pop that over there to one side. And just while that's drying, I'm just going to clean up a little bit because I will end up with that all over my hands if I don't, because I know what I'm like. And you can see the hybrid is actually drying on the plastic. So you can see how good a paint it is. It comes off, absolutely. Just a little bit of elbow grease, as my mum would have said. Get a little bit of elbow grease on it. And then, you know, you can just carry on. I would get one of these mats as well that you can work on. The heat mats is fabulous. Andrew's saying it looks funny on the overhead. It's just because it's been screwed up in a bag for goodness knows how long. That's probably why it looks a bit funny. Just saying. Right, so one of the techniques that I love to do with steampunk stuff is triple thick embossing enamel. And we did this on air and everyone was like, wow, look at that. And I just presumed that it was something that everybody did because I've known about this technique for years and years and years. But as ever, we get new people all the time. So I found the Wow embossing pad, and this was interesting because I'm used to using a Versamark ink pad, and Versamark ink pads are quite squishy and they're quite sticky. You can feel it. If you put your finger on a Versamark ink pad, you can feel it's tacky. If you do it on here, it doesn't feel like there's anything on it. And I actually thought I got a faulty ink pad, but I haven't. It's the way that it's made. So all I'm going to do is just press this onto here. In fact, I'm going to take that and press it into the ink pad rather than trying to get the ink pad, because I'm working on a solid surface. I can't push that ink pad into there as easily as if I do it like this. So I am literally just pressing that piece of chipboard. Now I've cut a thin grey board. It could be a cereal box, something like that. I've just cut a really thin grey board with the dies. So this was the nesting die that came with the Fearless Fairy. And it's a nice thing to do. If you've got a Pro Cut or you've got a die cutting machine that has a metal shim, use the metal shim, because it means that just a regular thin metal die will cut through your grey board for you. Right, so I'm going to leave that for now, pop that to one side, and we're going to pour some ultra thick embossing enamel over here, okay? So I'm going to choose a tub. See, I'm doing my lucky thing again. I do this all the time. I don't know why I do that, but I do. It's a thing. It's a Melanieism, maybe. And I'm just going to take these big chunks of plastic out because these are some that I saved from last week. And I'm just going to pour this over the top. Now, in this tub, I have got what's going on. There's even a little cog there. I don't know what they're doing. That's doing. I'm just going to pour this over the top. There's teal, there's blue, there's burgundy, there's copper, there's all sorts in here. So keep an empty tin, an empty tub, and then you can put all your bits, all the mixed bits back together. And I love that. That's the best bit when you get all these different colours. So I'm just going to now put that back in the tub before it goes everywhere. Like that, and pop that to one side for a minute. So we talked about heating and melting and drying. So for this one, I'm actually going to get my heat gun really, 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 really super, super, super hot. So I've got it on the highest setting. Let it get really hot because you want that embossing powder to start to melt almost immediately. And you have to sneak up on it a little bit. So because I've got ink down, it's not too bad because that ink is holding that embossing powder, but it will start to blow. And you can see that it just starts to melt. I love this technique. I think it's just fabulous. Hot enough in any one area. Just keep going and let that melt. And you get almost like a dappled effect, which is quite nice. And if I now took that and ran a black stays on ink over the top, it would pick up all those little dimples, if you like, for the sake of a better word. Now, you've got two options now. You can either keep heating it and very quickly drop some more embossing powder over the top of it, but I like to let it go cool and then put another layer of ink on, because the ink will be constant right the way across the top of the board. Whereas if I just drop embossing powder, I might not get that full coverage. And to build this up into layers, we need it to be thick enough, okay? So right now it's just like a normal, regular embossing powder, maybe a little bit deeper than that because it's ultra thick. And just to talk to you while that's just cooling a minute about embossing powders. Embossing powders are made from plastic. And it depends how far they're ground down. Depends on whether you get a chunky finish, you get an ultra fine finish, and everything in between. But I love the ultra thick embossing enamels because if you work with polymer stamps rather than acrylic stamps or red or grey rubber stamps, you can stamp directly into it when it's molten and it looks phenomenal. And if you ever just want an embellishment that's different and you're working with that dark, grungy look, this is absolutely perfect. Even if you're working with something pretty, you just change up the colours of your embossing powder and it looks phenomenal. So I'm going to take this again. I'm just going to push this into here. Okay, so I'm going to press down nice and firmly, making sure I've got ink, because this time I won't be able to see it. On the grey board, before I could see it, because it changed the grey board colour, but on this now I can't see whether it's got ink everywhere or not, so we just have to try it, which is kind of what we do a lot, isn't it, in crafting? We just try things. Never be scared just to experiment. You know, it's a bit of card at the end of the day. So I'm going to go back in now and put another layer of this over the top. Okay, so I'm just going to go in and do another layer. And you can do as many layers as you want or as few as you want. It's entirely up to you. If you've got a melt pot at home, which is going back a few years now since I've seen a melt pot, but if you've got one, you can melt it in a melt pot. It's really good because it just takes away all the messing about with heat guns, etc. Right, so let's melt this one now. So again, get it really hot. Don't go too close to it because the power will want to blow all the powder. So just sneak up on it. I love this technique because you never imagine that it's going to end up like this. It is just fabulous. And I'm going to do a third layer of this so that you can see how deep you can actually go with it. And this is the cob that was the new aperture that you got with your Fearless Fairy. See now it's really, really starting to thicken up and I love that. So don't think that you can just use the thin dyes, use all your dyes. You know, it's just fabulous. And mixing those colours makes a massive difference. You know, just be confident in what you're doing and just mix those colours. Right, so I'm going to bring in a stamp now, and this is from our Botanical Bliss Vintage Ink range, I want to say, and it's got like this crackle stamp to it, which I really, really liked. So I thought I might just do that, stamp that into here. So I'm going to do one more layer first of all. So I'm going to bring back in. Just be aware that when you're doing this, it is melted plastic and it gets very hot. And if it sticks to you, it hurts a lot. And I know that because I do it all the time. But just be aware it is like hot glue. It's that kind of temperature. It hurts if you stick your finger in it too soon. So be a little bit patient, which I'm not. I want everything yesterday. So I'm just pushing this in again. We're going to do one more layer and then we're going to push the stamp into it while it's still molten so you can get a look of what it looks like. Right, so paper, ultra thick embossing enamel. Let's go back in with the same colours because I like that. It works perfectly with what I want. And I love just saving all the colours. I'm not one that has to just do a bit and then save it back into the right pot. I just put everything in one because you get some really, really fabulous colours then. So I'm going to pull this off, just tap gently. Don't flick it or anything like that because you're just going to flick the powder off. And then all that lot goes back into the tub. And I've had these tubs probably for, I don't know, 10 years maybe, still going strong. So it takes a lot. You have to do a lot to get through a tub. So again, last time now we're going to go in here and we're going to up. working my way around, not rushing the process, just letting it properly melt, because you'll find that it has different grades of particles in it, and sometimes the bit that's underneath doesn't melt completely. So you just need to take your time and make sure that you push that in. Right, so while that's still liquid and moving like that, I'm going to switch that off, and I am literally just going to put my stamp straight into it like that and press down. Now you should use a block, really. And I thought I was really organised this morning, but I'm obviously not. So but you can see that stamp isn't getting hot at all, which is great. And then just leave it to cool for a minute or two, and you'll know because this will want to release. And you pull that back, and you've got all that texture now in there. And that was a bit of cardboard and some embossing powder. And I love that because it gives you a different finish. I think that's a really cool technique. So it's Botanical Bliss stamps from Vintage Ink. You can use any stamp, whichever you prefer. But that one I think is really cool because it gives you that distressed crackle finish. Right, so let's go back to our frame now and see where we're at with this. Now it's just had time to start to go off a little bit. And I'm going to start to bring in some different colours. So I want this to look a bit like a rusty patina. So I want that teal in it, and I want that little bit of gold in it, and I want these different colours. So I'm going to grab my stencil brushes from here, and we're just going to lay down a layer of brown first of all. And I never know what this is going to look like when it's done. So you just go with it. I'll guarantee there will be a part in it where you look at it and go, really don't like that, keep going. Because I was exactly like that when we went to Cadence. She gave me all this stuff and I was like, got halfway through and I was like, this is not good. But then you keep going. And it's like that reveal of that stencil when you pasted the stencil and it looks shocking, but then when you lift it off, that amazing reveal. So this is a really good one. So I'm going to go in with a little bit of, let me give you the names, because as I said, we're having a special on it this weekend. And Hermese, which is Turkish. Does it not give me a name? Oh yeah, it does, bear with. Antique Red. It's actually like a bronzy colour, more like a copper colour. So I'm just going to put some of this onto my mat and I'm pushing that paint into that brush. And then I'm just going to start to tap like this. And I'm not doing this where I'm methodical like that. I am literally moving that brush. I've got the smallest amount of paint on. It's almost dry. And that's what you want. You don't want a lot, you just want a little bit. So you're almost dry brushing it. And I know many of you will know what dry brushing is, but for those of you, in case there isn't, because I didn't know, well, you know, there's a point where everybody didn't know something, isn't there? And then you learn it and then you know it. So dry brushing is all about getting a tiny amount of paint on your brush and then just stippling with it. You can do swirls if you prefer, if that works for you, but I find stippling gives you more of a texture, and we want it to look textured. We want it to look like old rusty metal. And it blows my mind with this when you do stuff like this and you think, oh, it's going to be really messy, it's going to take forever. Actually, it doesn't. It's really quick, it's really simple, and if you can pick up a brush and do that, you can do this technique. I'm just going to pick up a little bit more. My brushes are shedding a little bit. That's probably my fault for leaving them in water for too long, because then I get distracted. I do something and I get distracted. Although yesterday, I have to say, I sat there all day and watched that amazing procession for our beautiful Queen, with a tear in my eye, I have to say. Went through quite a bit of chocolate yesterday. But wasn't it just magnificent? Absolutely. There's nobody does pomp and ceremony like we do, is there? It was just beautiful. Right, so I'm going to pick this up. I'm just going to go in and just dab here and there. Just go in and add that layer. Remember that we're going to do the inside of the frame and the outside edge as well. And we're going to go along all these little bees. I think it was $4.99 this frame. It wasn't expensive at all. But like I say, go to your charity shops and just see what they've got in. I have to be quick when I'm over in Derbyshire because either David or Stephanie gets there before me. Went to the charity shop. They were like, We've just had somebody come in and buy a load of frames. I was like, yeah, I know who that would have been. Got there before me. So I'm just going in like this and just dabbing that paint. So I'm not having complete coverage. It's just a little bit here and there, okay? And then down the edges, I'm just going to swipe it, I think, just to speed up the process a little bit. So I'm just going to drag that brush backwards and forwards, long sweeping motion. So don't just do this, just get your brush and sweep from one end to the other. Because you've got such a small amount of paint on, gosh, my brushes are shedding. I need to get some new ones. And then just swipe across like that. These are really good quality brushes as well. They shouldn't be shedding like that. And I'm starting to pick up a little bit of the texture now that I put on with the black paint. So you can start to see it's building up that coppery layer. Now I'm going to go in, get rid of all those brush hairs, that'll drive me crazy, with just a little bit of a matte brown now, just to knock that shine back. Because remember, we want it to look old. We don't necessarily want it to look shiny. So I'm going to go in just with a tiny bit of brown, and I'm leaving some black. I'm not going over the whole thing, but I am literally just using my stencil brush to do the work for me and put that colour down. Like so. Pick that up and go with that and just soften it all out. Okay, last bottom bit. And it's quite therapeutic, this, I have to say, especially if you've had quite a stressful week, because you can really give it some welling with dabbing like that. Right, so I'm going to keep that paint out for now, and I'm going to go in with a little tiny bit of teal. So I've got this really bright turquoise, which is not much good for me right now. So I'm going to put a little bit of brown in it and just knock that back a bit. And just make it look a bit more oxidized. And I actually want it to be a little bit greener than that, a little bit more of a, just going to put a little bit touch of green in. And you can see I'm using the tiniest amount here. I mean, tiny, tiny amounts of paint, because you don't need much more than that. And I haven't cleaned my brush either. I don't think there's going to be any. It's left in my brush by the time I finish this. Coming out. Right, so look, I'm just now going in and just adding the tiniest amount of that teal in. So teal with a bit of brown and a little bit of green, because we want it to look aged. There's no point putting in a really bright, vibrant paint on something that's old. It won't look right. So we're just building up these layers now. And I thought, especially because the Fearless Fairy is quite steampunk in her look, this will be a nice thing to show you. And just brushing over those little, almost like faux beads that we've got on that faux decoration. And don't look at the frame for what it is now, look at it for what it's going to look like. That's the great thing about doing stuff like this. So I'm literally just going in and just dabbing. If you've got any questions at all, just put them into the chat, and then our lovely producer Andrew will read them out to me, because I'm concentrating. You've lost me now, I'm crafting. I've been like that all weekend, so I've been starting, well, apart from yesterday, I've been starting the next made from the memory USB for Scan and Cut. I've got this massive project on my desk at the moment, which is looking fabulous, but yeah, it's going to take a while. Right, so I'm now going in with a little bit of gold, and it's just called gold. It's a hybrid metallic, and I want the smallest amount. Look how tiny amount of paint I'm actually putting down. It's like a pea size. You don't need any more than that. And I'm literally just going to dab this into that teal, because I want to knock that gold back a little bit. And then I'm just going to go in, and as I'm going in with this, I'm just going to wipe over. So I'm just going to put the paint down and then just use my finger just to soften it out, because I don't want too much. Literally just dabbing that in. I'm going to go in and pick a little bit up, not from the main bead of paint, just from the bits that are left over, like this. And just go in and work my way along like that. And if you find that you think it's getting too bright or that gold's a little bit too bright, don't worry, we can knock it back. We're not going to think about that. But by stippling like this, I'm getting texture now on this frame and it looks fabulous. In fact, I think what we'll do is we'll do this frame, and then at the end of the class, I will ask Andrew just to choose a name, and we'll send you this out as a gift for joining the class, okay? So we're going in here now. Right, so I've now got that yellow one, but I think that looks quite rusty now. I'm quite happy with that. I was wondering whether I needed to put a little bit more of the rust in, but I don't think I do. But I am going to just go in with a little bit of black. So I'm just going to put a tiny amount onto there. I'm going to use the brush that I've had the gold on, and I'm going to really push that paint into that brush like that. And then I'm literally just going to go over like this. So I'm dry brushing again. I'm just hitting the top surface of this frame now just to knock that gold back a little bit. So I'm not stippling this time. I'm just using that. I want it to look like it's been in an old boiler house somewhere with loads of soot on it. Reminds me of my dad's works, that. You can smell that now. It's going to go in here and just really get rid of a lot of that paint like that. Okay, so we've now got our frame. Happy with that. So I'm going to pop that to one side just to completely dry. And I really don't want to do this, but I am going to have to get rid of that paint, which is a shame. And it's my fault for putting too much paint out. So I'm just going to scrape this up off here. That makes me want to cry throwing that away, but it is what it is. Get my big girl pants on, I'll be all right. Just get rid of the rest of this on here like that. That just breaks my heart because it's so nice. To say the prices on the Cadence paints are, never ever can I get my head around the fact that Cadence quality is not reflected in the price at all. I would be expecting, for the quality of this, I would think probably £8 a bottle would be a reasonable price, and they're nowhere near that. And as I said at the beginning, we've got a special on this weekend. I don't know what it's going to be. I haven't had that information yet, probably because they're worried that I'll go in and buy a load of stuff because I'm terrible for that. But yeah, it'll be good to see what we're going to do. Right, so while we've got, I'm just going to put that to one side. And I'm just going to do a little bit of a different paint technique with you on one of the pipes. Now, this might be a little bit more difficult to see, but we'll give it a go and see where we get to. So I'm going to just choose a couple of these pipes. And I'm just going to peel this out of grey board. So this is just a little piece of grey board that I had. And Stephanie taught me how to do this, so I have to see if I can remember now. So a little bit of red. Tiniest amount of red. That red is beautiful. That's called Bordeaux. It's a proper rich blue red. It's lovely. And then I'm going to add a little bit of the yellow in, I think, which will then give me an orange. Now, top tip, when you're cleaning your paints, before you close them, just wipe around the nozzle, because you'll end up with this build-up of paint, which is quite cool. I do quite like it because you get to pick it off. It's a bit like glue when you're a kid. Small things, that's what my geography teacher used to say to me all the time. Small things amuse small minds, Melanie. I was like, yep. And the tiniest amount of yellow, like that. So we're going to double load our brush, which is where the Stephanie bit comes in. And we're going to put yellow on the other side like that. Okay, and then we're just going to push that into that brush, okay? Get that paint in there. So I've got my ombre colour now, and I'm going to start just by putting that down the pipe, and it looks really bright, but go with it because it won't do by the time we're finished, okay? I go in here, I'm going to put this over here like this. I'm going to do the other one as well because it looks awful at the moment. It looks really bright, but it won't do by the time we're finished. And this is just literally playing. You just have to get over that hurdle of, oh, it's messy, I'm not sure it's for me, because it's really good fun when you get over that bit. I'm going to go in with a little bit of the brown now, just to knock that colour back, because that's really bright. That bit of paint, I don't need that. Coming to the end of a bottle, that makes me a little bit nervous. Though I do know we've had a delivery in. Go on, paint, knock down, there we go. Tiny amount of brown here, like this. So let's get a little bit of brown just into that red and that yellow there, and then we can just go back over. So we've got our base down, now we're starting to add brown bit. Okay, so I've just been asked, Catherine has just asked if her 6-year-old has asked if there's ever going to be a male fairy. Well, yes, probably. I think what we're going to do is do a male version of this fairy, the steampunk fairy, because I think that'll be a really nice one to get started. We've got so yes, Catherine, is the answer to your question. I will absolutely do a masculine one. It will be probably quite steampunky, kind of traveller kind of look to it, I would have thought, which should be good. So we've got all sorts. Might even do a wizard. I've just had a gasp in my ear from Andrew because he's a massive Harry Potter fan. But yes, we could do a wizarding fairy, couldn't we? That would be fabulous, wouldn't it? The Enchanted Elf is next, and I will show you her because she launches a week on Monday. So next week I've got, no, not Tattered Lace, 2 Red Robins, USB, on Monday as a pick of the week. And then the week after that, as a one-day special on the Monday, I have the, oh, I want to do that. Sorry, I just put my paintbrush in my paint. We've got the Enchanted Elf, and she is lovely, absolutely lovely. I love her. She's different to all the other fairies because she doesn't have wings, because she's not a fairy, she's an elf. And she's the Christmas elf, and she comes and delivers winter to the woodland. So I'm going in now, and I've just put a little bit of the teal down. This is turquoise. And I've mixed it in with a little bit of brown to knock that colour back. So when we talk about knocking back, and I'm sure I've said this to you all before, but I will say it again because we do get new people all the time. When you have a pure colour, so the raw colour, and you add white to it, you get a tint because it makes it lighter. When you add black to it, you get a shade, like a shadow, because it makes it darker. That's how I remember it. And if you add grey, you get a tone. So it mutes it back, it knocks it back a little bit. And that's what we're doing, but we're doing it with the brown, because the brown at some point will have some kind of black or grey in it somewhere. And we're just picking up that colour and we're changing it a little bit. So I've now got a little bit of teal on there and a little bit of the brown on there. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of the red and just go back in again because I just want a little bit of red, just a little bit more rusty colour in there. And then I'm going to take the tiniest amount of yellow. I can just get that into an orange like that, and then just run down the side. So what I'm doing is I'm holding my brush quite vertical, and I'm literally just skimming over the top just to add that little bit of light in. In fact, if I go in with a little bit of gold, and you can see there I didn't mix the turquoise properly, and the oil is separating from the paint. Make sure that you mix it in really, really well, that you shake it really well. So I'm picking up a tiny, tiny bit of that gold now, and I'm just going to brush it down one side of that pipe. And what that does is just add the light to that side, a little bit more, because I put the tiniest amount on there then. Tiny amount, get it in, work it into those bristles on that brush. That's what I found works really well. And then on this one, just go over and it just adds those highlights in. So if I move this out of the way now, I'm going to get rid of all that paint for you so that you can see a clean table, which is very unlike me. Should have seen my craft desk this last week. literally, it was like an obstacle course in my craft room because you had to climb over everything because there were boxes everywhere. All the grey board was back out, the glue was out. I had 2 scan and cuts running, all going on this week, but I've really enjoyed it. So my husband used to be a stonemason. He's actually retired now because he's a lot older than I am. Well, he's not a lot, 7.5 years older than me, but I do like to remind him now and again. And I'm building this house that has like an unusual roof on it. And I said, right, I need to know what this angle is. So he got his computer out and started designing it in 3D. I was like, just use a protractor and measure the angle. But no, he's got to do it in his certain way, which just made me smile. So I've now got my 2 rusty pipes here, which are really cool as well. And I love that. I think that's a really nice addition. So you can see that they look quite old and rusty, but like my hands do now as well. A bit old and rusty, and you get that nice rusty patina feel from it. If I put them on there, we might be able to zoom in a little bit, Andrew, do you think? Maybe? So you can see we've got this texture and we've got that little bit of luminosity in there with the gold. But when you start to put everything together, it looks really, really, really cool. Right, so I'm going to move my paints out of the way for now, and let's start building this frame. Steampunk Wizards. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I'm getting all sorts of ideas. I love this because, you know, I've spent a lot of years selling other people's products, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and long may it continue, because I have absolutely worked with some of the best companies in the world, and that's been really exciting. But when you start to do your own, it's a little bit scary, I'm not going to lie. It's interesting because, you know, they say, oh yeah, Quirky Bird's your brand. It's not my brand, it's our brand. And that's the thing about it. When you've got interaction like we have on a regular basis, like in a Zoom class, it's brilliant, because you can then say to me, well, we'd really like this or we'd really like that. And obviously there is a business element to it where it has to be commercial, and we have to know that it will sell, or have an idea that it will sell, because you never ever know for sure. But what's lovely is that, you know, people ask for certain things, and we can absolutely do that as long as we know that it's, you know, going to be enough people wanting it. Right, so I'm just going to bring in, this is from the inside of the frame, okay? So I'm just going to mark this with a pen, no, or pencil even, that'll do. So I know that I want this door in, and I know that I want this area. This is one of the backgrounds. And I love this because it's got the metal tread on the floor, and it looks, there's a step up, and then you want to know what's behind there. I want to go in there. I love stuff like that. And I'm just going to draw, because I haven't brought my trimmer, which is ridiculous because it goes everywhere with me. I'm just going to draw a line down here so that I can cut this out, and I've got a similar size that will then fit into the frame, because there's no point doing it if it doesn't fit in the frame. And then I'm going to get my scissors. Gosh, it's a long time since I've done this. Cut something out with a pair of scissors like that. It's usually scan and cut. Scan it in, cut it out. I tell you, my scan and cut's been working 10 to the dozen this week, cutting all those bits out. Every roof tile is individual, but it's going to be amazing. I'm very excited. So we're just in the process at the moment of deciding what to do with the Christmas house, whether we put it on as a kit with a class that's been pre-recorded, so very much like made from the memory, because there's no cutting files for it. We're making them. I love that bit. All those basic shapes that you can make into something really cool. Or whether we just put it on a USB, but I think we do both. So if you're up for a challenge, and also if you've got a scan and cut and it's still in the box, please join me tonight. 5:30 till 6:30 for SDX users, and 7 till 8 for CM users, because we're doing our free monthly class tonight, which is super exciting. I love that bit. Right, so I'm going to pop this in here now, and I'm going to work in the frame, because then I can see, rather than working outside of the frame and then putting it in, I always work inside the frame. It's just something that I do. I don't want the glass at the front, because I don't want it to be shiny, because that doesn't work with the look and the feel of the frame. And then I put the glass behind so it keeps that depth. And then I'm just going to push this down with my tweezers like this. So we're going to push that into here, and then we know what we're working with. And you could do the back of the frame as well. If I was doing this at home, I'd probably paint the back of the frame as well, because I'm a bit like that. And now we've got a picture in there. And this is what I love about the Quirky Bird Designs, is that you get the background papers, because it just sets that scene. It takes away that scary area. And remember, this was blue originally, and now it looks like this old gilded frame. Now you could go in, if you wanted to, and add a little bit of gold. So I'm going to do that. One, because it will show you how to do it. And two, because I've got gold in here. And it's quite a bright gold in the middle of there. Can you see how it pops out against everything else? It's almost like it casts a reflective, you know, it casts the light over here. So there's something very powerful behind there. I just haven't decided what it is yet. Then I'm going to go into my finger waxes. Now these are from Cadence as well. These are water-based, which means that you can paint with them as well. So I'm just going to stipple. I picked up a little bit on my stencil brush, and I prefer to do it on a stencil brush than using my finger for this, because it's a lighter touch. And I'm just going to go in, and we're just going to brush over the top like this. So very light, backwards and forwards like that. And you'll see it start to pick up those raised areas on that frame. Spend hours and hours and hours just playing like this. Unfortunately, I don't get the time to do it very often, but it is lovely. Love it. And we're just going to go over the top there, and then I'm just going to bring it around the edges. So I'm going to pick up a little bit more, and I'm going to work along the edges of this frame just to bring in a little bit of a glow. So not stippling it, not adding to the colour, just literally swiping over the backwards and forwards with your stencil brush like that. Just backwards and forwards, and just hitting those little high points. And because I've stippled the paint on, it's left a slight texture. That looks much better. So now I've done that, that works with the teal. It's pulled the teal out a little bit. It's made it just pop a little bit more. We've got the darkness of the brown and the metal in there, but we've got just this slight highlight of gold, which is lovely. So what we need to do now is build our picture, which is the really fun bit. So I'm going to move all this off here and bring in my tray of goodies, because this is the best thing ever. And every fairy, it's a thing now. Every time I bring a new one out, I have to have a new tray to put all my stuff in it, because I can't bear to have bits all over the place and not use them. So I have got, I'm going to move all these paints out of the way because we don't need these again. Let's get all my paints out of the way. This is the problem, you see. They give me a really big desk and I fill it. And then I need another really big desk and then I fill that. Sound familiar? I tell you. Right, so let me get into my little tub of goodies. Blimey, that's stuck. Right, there we go. So I've now got all my little bits and pieces in here, look, all laid out ready for me to have a play with. Pick that paintbrush up. So I can start to now have a really good play. So the first thing I want to do is get some pipes in there, because I want to create, I know I've got a frame here, but I want to create kind of a frame in here. So if I pick up my Fearless Fairy, she's going to stand about there, I think. So she could go up there. So it looks like she's stood on that step. Or you can have her down here, like she's walking away from it, whichever you prefer. So we're just going to play around with some compositions, first of all. And these are some of the pipes that I did, ready for the show. And I'm just going to start by building these up. So I like that colour because it brings the colour of the frame into the picture. It's got that rusty patina look to it. So we're going to work with that. I'm going to grab another one. I've got so many in here. Honestly, you should have seen the state of me when I was doing this. It was hilarious. There was just stuff everywhere. And I could see Stephanie kept walking past my desk and just like looking as if to say, she will clean it up. I know she will, but look at the state of it right now. This tray I got from, people are asking where I got my trays from. This tray I got from the range. It was $4.99. It's Wham, W-H-A-M. They do some really, really cool storage solutions. So yeah, mostly off there. I'll just nip to the range and see what they've got in. Sometimes they've got loads of stuff, sometimes it's just rubbish, but I just pick them up as and when I find them. And then I've got these little fixings or these fittings that are going to go in between. And I'm not bothered if it's a little bit broken either in places. It doesn't all have to connect, which I quite like. I don't think that I need it to be, you know, precise, and that's not what it's about. It's just about that grungy, darker look. And I love this fairy because she's got the most amazing wings, but different, not, you know, what you would normally expect, not pretty and twee. We've done a couple of those. Now we're moving on to something a little bit darker. We'll come back to pretty at some point. I do like the darker bits to it. And then we've got a pipe that's been done slightly differently. So I think Stephanie did this one. She's added a bit more teal into it. So it's kind of, you know, you make your choice and you decide what you like, but whatever you're going to do, try and balance it. So because I've got a bit more teal in this one, I'm going to balance it over here a little bit with another one. So I'm actually going to take this one out and pop this one in. So don't think, you know, just because they're not all the same, it doesn't matter. Okay, just go with it and see what you come up with. Right, so I'm going to glue these down now because I know that that's kind of where the positions I want them to be in, and then I'm not moving everything as I'm building up my composition. So I'm going to go in with a little bit of bookbinding glue, and that works perfectly. Love that glue, brilliant glue. We'll find it on our website as well. We stock it now, which is cool. Go through well, I don't go through a lot of it because it's really good, but when I'm doing my grey board projects for Scan and Cut, I go through quite a bit of the tubs. And Christine will tell you, if you've ever seen Christine selling it on air, she'll tell you the less you use, the better. She's absolutely right. You don't need loads of it, just need a bit of it. So I'm going to just nudge that down a little bit there. We can fill in those bits where the glue's been afterwards because we've got lots of cogs and things like that to add into it, which is cool. So it's up to you. You can use the pipes that with the reflection that you can download for free, which is great. And you can use those. You can do all grey board. You can mix the two. It's entirely up to you. It's your project. But I would like you to share your projects. We're going to try and get a Quirky Bird Facebook page set up, because we've got a lovely lady now called Di, who I've known for years and years and years and years. And she was an editor at Practical Publishing back in the day when I was first starting out. And we used to do loads of projects together, which was really cool. Anyway, she's come to work with us. So she's going to be sorting all the social media stuff out. Because as much as I would love to have time to do it all, I don't. I just don't. And I know what will happen. And then I'll get frustrated because I can't keep up with it. So our lovely Di is going to do it for us, which is great. And I want to see what you're doing because I love that bit. I know what I do with it, but I'd love to see what you do with it, which is super exciting. We can all share ideas. And any more ideas for any different fairies. So we've got the Enchanted Elf. Then we're doing an Alice in Wonderland inspired one, which is super cool, called the Curious Fairy. Curious and Curiouser, which will be really lovely. Right, so I've got my pipe work in place now. So I've got my outside frame. I'm happy with the frame. I'm just going to pop this one down here, missed one. And then we're going to start to build up the rest of the picture and see where we get to. And like I say, we'll get Andrew just to pick a name at the end of it. And we'll send this out for you, which will be nice. Right, so let's have a look what else we've got. We've got some light bulbs here. So let me show you how we did the light bulbs. Move that out of the way. We'll come back and do this technique. So for the light bulbs, let me just see if I've got one that I've already cut out, which I might not even have, but we'll have a look. Got a light bulb? Yes, I have. It's only a little one though. Oh, let's use this one. This is a bit bigger. Right, so for this, rather than getting the paint out, I used a brown ink pad, and I'm going to use a VersaFine Clair. Now, VersaFine Clair do a couple of different browns. Fallen Leaves, which is quite a greyed out, so a tonal brown, which is lovely. I actually really like that colour. But then they do one that's more of a reddy based brown. And I'm going to use that for this because I want that little pop of brown, that little pop of colour. And actually, if you look at this paint, it's quite similar to the ink. So I'm pulling those colours together now. And all I'm going to do is get a little bit of my cut and use foam again. I can use the end of that because that hasn't got any paint on it. And I'm just going to push that down on there. Now, when I was at home doing this, I just literally stuck the piece of card into the ink pad. But because I'd like to keep my fingers some bit clean today, yeah, good luck with that, Melanie. I'm just going to do it this way. Okay, so we've now got our light. Okay, so that's now covered in that base that I need. Let's get my cloth. I'm trying not to use wet wipes anymore. I'm trying to use just a cloth because it's better. Then I'm going to come in with a little bit of the gold, and I'm going to use a little tiny flat paintbrush for this. I'm going to pick up the smallest amount here, and again just work it into the bristles of that brush, and then I'm going to turn this, hold it firmly, and just use that brush to create the light. So the tiniest amount. You hardly need anything on here. I'm just going to pick that up again, add a little bit more just to add a little bit of the light there. Happy with that. And then I'm going to use a little bit of silver. And my silver has almost gone, so I'll see if I can get enough out of it to do this. So a little bit of the silver, I'm going to turn it round and I'm just going to work the way that the fixing would be, like that. So it gives a little bit of a shine. And then I'm going to just grab, bear with me 1 minute, my glossy accents. Now, glossy accents is an interesting medium because you can use it as a glue and you can use it as a varnish. But you've just got to be careful because sometimes when you put glossy accents over the top of something that's got a colour underneath it, it can change the colour. So if you're working with like a really blue red, like a postbox red, when you then come to put glossy accents on, it can turn it more orangey. So just be careful. We did bring out the little embellishments. So the other great thing is that it blocks up really easily as well. Little like epoxy resin embellishments and called crystal drops, and they work really well, but we don't do them in a lot of big sizes. So sometimes you've just got to use glossy accents. If you haven't got glossy accents, but you have got a clear embossing powder, you can use that. And that will give you a nice sheen as well. So lots of different options that you can use. When you put glossy accents down, it will be cloudy. So if you like sticking your finger in stuff to see if it's dry, put that on your table and put a blob of glossy accents next to it so you're not sticking your finger in there because it will come up with a fingerprint. And then you just leave that to dry completely so it goes nice and glossy so it looks like a glass light bulb. So I'm going to pop that way out of the way because otherwise that will get stuck somewhere. And then you'll end up with lots of these little light bulbs that come down, and we did lots of different ones, which was nice, so different heights, different widths, different shapes. And I'm going to start just sticking some of these in here now. So that one, think about where your fair is going to go. That's what you need to do as well, is just bring this back in. I think this is the first fairy that we've done more techniquey bits with, which I like. It's a bit more creative, I guess. So I'm hoping that you're liking it too, but I would love your feedback, whether you like it, if you don't like it, what you don't like, all of that, because that's invaluable to us when we're designing product. You know, if we can design it almost bespoke for you while still being commercial. I've got Stephanie in my head going, while still being commercial, then absolutely, let's do it. Because that's the fun bit, isn't it? Bringing you something that you really want. Right, so let's just start to build up some of these light bulbs across the top. And it's nice doing this because you've got the frame already. You know, you've got all your bits of paints and stuff like that. And like I said, if you haven't, we are having a Cadence special this weekend, which is super exciting. And I think my basket's going to be filling up as well, because we do buy our own stuff as well. I know we get a lot of it given to us because it's you know, what we do for a living, but yeah, the amount of parcels that have arrived over the last couple of weeks at my house is like ridiculous. So I'm just going across, just moving that, making sure that they're straight. And then I want a shorter one, it to be quite wide. So I'm going to snip this one down because I've got too many long pieces here and it looks a bit strange. So I just want to fill this in. So I'm going to cut that stem completely off and I'm going to have that, just the light bulb at the top. So it creates this little cluster of light bulbs, which is nice. Again, not too much glue. The more glue you use, the longer you have to wait for it to dry. And this glue is brilliant because it has a very low water content. It's made for bookbinding. So you can imagine, you know, you're not going to want to use a glue that's got a high water content if you're messing around with old books. You're going to want it to be nice and you know, do the job, but without leaving all that water residue. Let me find some more little light bulbs coming out of here. There we go. This is why I cut loads of stuff, because I can't see stuff in my head. I have to have it in front of me, then I know what it's going to look like. So it's definitely a thing. I'm going to pop that on there like that. And then I'm going to bring in a different light bulb. And I just spent like a couple of hours just doing light bulbs, you know, and just painting pipes, because you're still being creative without finishing a project. And it's quite exciting when you start something like this and you're like, right, I'm going to do a load of light bulbs, I'm going to do a load of pipes, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then you've got everything in front of you and you just start to play. But it's that build up, it's that, you know, that's what crafting's all about. It's not necessarily about the destination, it's about that journey to get there. And that's the bit where we craft, which is why we do it in the first place. So I love doing stuff like this, just setting a day apart. So I know that I haven't done anything for the next fairy yet, apart from colour her in and pick all the artwork. But I do know that this week, probably Friday this week, when I've prepped my pick of the week for next week, I'll probably just sit and have a day just cutting stuff out. Then I know that when, I might have that one up there actually, that's quite nice, a cluster. I know that when I come to actually do the finished samples, then, you know, everything's at hand and I find it works much easier. I'm going to use that one almost like a corner. So because we've got that rounded corner there on the pipes, I'm just putting that little cluster of light bulbs there. Don't worry about the glue being white because it will dry, and you can see how I've started to build it up. And to balance that, I'm going to put another cluster down. So it's now using those light bulbs as a corner, which is really cool. So think about, you know, just play around with ideas, take a picture on your phone, come back to it, walk away, come back to it again. You know, none of us are ever satisfied instantly with what we do. It's that process, it's building up that layer on layer on layer on layer. And people will say, well, when do you know when to stop? When you're happy with it. When you like it, it's your project. So when you're happy with it, that's when you stop. And everybody has different styles and different ideas. I'm a more is more kind of girl. Don't do less is, well, I can do less is more, but I find it harder to do a simple card than I do to do something that's really complex. It's just the way I am. Right, so I'm going to just do a little bit of decoupage with her because I think she warrants it. So I'm going to just snip away her wings on here. Now, just as you would expect with any dies that come out of here, you've got lots of just little snip lines. And we're just going to go in and remove those little wings. And I'm still thinking about Catherine, who asked about his 6-year-old little boy, as to what we can do for that. Well, I'll tell you something. I think the Enchanted Elf will be quite good because she's not too feminine. She's quirky, as you would expect. Clues in the name, Quirky Bird. So that might be a nice one for him to do. I think he'll enjoy her. And I like the fact that she's a little elf. She's super cute. I do love that. She's absolutely, I love her. And what I've started doing from this one, from Fearless Fairy onwards, I'm colouring them in. So instead of having the reflections coloured digitally for the fairy, I'm colouring them in myself with alcohol markers. And I'd like to know how many of you would be interested in having a class on colouring in if we did a free download of a digital stamp. How many of you would like a class of colouring her in, maybe in different mediums? So please let me know what you think about that, because then we can start to make that. We just want to do loads of classes. And next year, we are opening our training academy. And it sounds like, I think a lot of people have thought that it's for us to teach retailers, but it's not. It's for us to teach you guys. So you'll be able to come and spend anything from a day to a week with us, which will just be lovely. Have all that time. And also Stephanie and I are doing a retreat in Doncaster on the 8th and 9th of October. Stephanie's doing a day of painting. And then I'm doing a day of Quirky Bird, and we'll split the groups over the 2 days, but it'll be really good fun. So if you fancy that as well, please have a look on the Highlight Crafts website and check it out. So I'm now going to take the bits that I've cut off, which were her wings, because I don't want to waste these because they're fabulous. I'm just snipping off any extra little pieces that I wasn't too sure about, and I might use them just as a corner. I'm just going to hold them there for a minute and then see what I do with the rest of the frame. And I might use them, or I might save them for a later project, but I've got them. Don't throw any bits like that away because it's quite cool. Right, so her constant companion is the Regal Raven. I love this die. I think he's fabulous. And I chose him because I liked her with the cane. I thought she looked really, really cool. And quite traveller-ish, quite time traveller, I thought, when I saw her. But I love the fact that the Raven has the cane as well, and that they both have the top hat. I thought it was just perfect to work together. I was very excited when I found the Regal Raven because he's just amazing. And again, right down to the little teeny tiny clock that's on his top hat and the little pocket watch that is in his waistcoat. I think, it just makes such a difference having those extra little elements to play around with. And that's what I wanted Quirky Bird to be about. I wanted to bring you something that you could get lost in, that you could just go into your room physically and mentally and just sit there and let everything else that's going on in the world just pass over you and just sit and create beautiful things. You might just keep them for yourself, you might gift them. And very much this year, Christmas is going to be very much a handmade Christmas. I'm going to make lots of stuff. I'm going to do some of the little landscapes that Stephanie's been teaching you in the painting pages. I'm going to do some pictures with Two Red Robin stuff. I'm just going to really make stuff. I say that and I'll get to Christmas Eve and it'll be like, I haven't done any of it yet, but that's standard for me. Because I'll be busy doing other stuff. But that's what I'm going to do this year. I think it's important. And it saves us a bit of money, which is good. Because you could, if you bought something like this on somewhere like Etsy, you'd be paying a fortune. Whereas an inexpensive frame from the charity shop, job done. Right, so this cog here, I'm going to show you how to do this in a minute, is a bit of black paint with some gilding wax over the top. And I've cut it in half, because I just want half of it there, and then I could put half of it there. So going over the pipes, but looking like it's coming out from the side of the frame. Always work right out to this aperture part as well. So some will just come from behind there, some will come from over here. So you're adding that depth and dimension. Because you've got this depth here, you might as well make the most of it and utilize it. Then I've got some little dragonflies, and the dragonflies I've done in exactly the same way that I did the triple thick embossing enamel. So just like we did the cog at the beginning, that's how I did the little dragonfly. And I'm just going to pop a little bit of glue onto his tail like that. And just have him just coming up. This is where you get to do all the little bits. And our lovely Amanda, a lot of you all know Amanda because she's done quite a lot of classes recently. And she said to me because she loves stuff like this has been her favourite fairy. And she said, I love it because you've got all these little bits of stuff and you can just keep adding and adding and adding. And it never looks too much, it just works. And I was like, well, that's great because that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted it to be like. And all these bits that I'm sticking on now are I'm actually going to use some pin flare glue gel for this because it's sticking onto plastic. And the bookbinding glue is good for that, but it's better if you've got something that's kind of solvent based because it will dry quicker on that plastic. So I'm now just bringing in different little elements here and there. So just taking these little corner pieces, these little cogs that have all been bound together, and even where the little bits are supposed to push out, I've left them in because it looks like it gives you different levels of that embossing powder, but that was just grey board, you know, and just adding that little bit of powder onto it just makes it look like metal. I've loved doing this one. This has been my favourite one as far as being creative with it is concerned. I think it's lovely and I love her. I think she's really different and a little bit more out there, which is what I wanted it to be. So now with the cogs here, I've got some that I've done with the rusty patina. So if I want something that's going to sink into the frame and not be as bold, then I would use one of the rusty ones. So for this one, for example, I'm just going to cut it in half and I'm going to have half of it on the frame there and I might have the other half on the frame there. So it's not standing out from the frame because you can see it, but it's not a big difference to the way that we've coloured the frame. So it's more subtle. It looks like it's always been there. It looks like it's part of the frame now. And it's like, you know, if you're doing things, you could even put the cogs down first before you painted the frame if you wanted to. And then when you go over with your finger waxes, your gilding waxes, it will just pick up that top layer. So think about adding different layers onto your frame before you paint it. That's another really cool technique to do as well. So you get a completely different look then, because as you're stippling, it will pick up those higher levels, if you like, with the different colours. And that's a really cool thing. It's just about playing, you know, and trying what you think you like, what you don't like, but also try what you think you won't like. Because I didn't ever think that I would like this kind of messy crafting, but I absolutely love it. I don't get to do it enough, which is a bit unfortunate, but once we've got our training academy, I'm going to be all over it. Because I think when you come to something, when you hear the word mixed media, it can be a little bit daunting. And if you're not used to all the different textures and the different names and the different paints and, well, what does that do? And why do I need gesso? And what do I need for that? It's a little bit daunting. Whereas what we'll do is we'll take you on that journey, just a little step at a time. So bringing it into things like this, bringing the paints and the techniques into your scan and cut and your die cutting, you know, it doesn't always have to be mixed media. It's just bringing in, instead of using ink, you use paint. It's just a different medium, and that's what mixed media is all about. It's just mixing up those different mediums and having a play and finding out what works and what doesn't work. It's a lovely, lovely thing to do. So I've gone round and I've got my rusty ones on here. I think I need one more little half just behind here before I start building on top of that. So I'm going to use this one, but I'm going to cut it in a different place. So I'm cutting through it now, and I'm just going to pop that one on there like that. That there. Just like this. And again, some of the little bits haven't popped out of the die. I'm fine with that. I actually want some to stay in to give it that old, rusty, forgotten look. Bit like me. Old, rusty and forgotten. I'm not forgotten. Right, so let's go in and add some of these more metallic cogs now. So you can see now the difference. You know, that really stands out on that frame. compared to the rusty ones that really don't. And that's the joy. You mix the two together. So we might have these coming in from this side, and that gives it that real pop of metallic now. And that's what it's like. You know, I've spent a long time when I was a little girl in different, sounds really weird, doesn't it, in boiler houses up and down the country, because my dad was an industrial heating engineer and I used to go to work with him in the holidays. I used to love it. Health and safety wouldn't allow it now, but I used to love it. And when you go into the boiler places, you know, in the boiler houses, etc., you've got all these different metals, and that's what we're replicating now. Tell me that again, Andrew, please. Tins. No, I wouldn't have done the tins any differently at all, because so Jan is saying that she would have liked to have seen a tin, and we've done a tin in all the other classes, or we've started a tin in all the other classes. But actually, let me just finish this bit off and then we'll go on to that, because I can show you how the paint, because it's a hybrid acrylic, it will work on a tin. So you'll do exactly the same thing. You can go around and just be aware that when you're using paint on a tin, you might not be able to shut it afterwards, because it's going to add depth, which is why we use the alcohol markers to colour the tins. But I wouldn't have done it any different. All I would have done is built up those layers. So I'll show you a tin in a minute, and then I can talk you through what we did. I'm just going to press that down firmly. Andrew, do we still have the class from the first fairy, the confident fairy? It's on YouTube, as in our YouTube, right? So can we send that class to Joanna? Who's that? So who do we need to contact to get that? Christine? Dawn? Okay, just because that's where we did the original tin. Yeah? We'll sort it out. We'll make it happen. I'll just make it happen. Right, so we've now got our frame, and I'm actually really quite happy with that. You might want to go in and add a few little extra dragonflies, etc. on here, and just build this up a little bit more. So because I've got a dragonfly there, and I like to work in odd numbers, because odd numbers creates interest. So if you've got an even number, symmetry, you will you'll see it as a whole. Okay, so you'll look at it and it's all balanced and it will make sense. When you use odd numbers, what it does is it forces the person that's looking at it, which could be you or me or your family members or whoever, to look all over the project, because they don't see it in one block. You have to search out. So you're looking for that dragonfly. Was there any more dragonflies? Oh yeah, there's one there. And oh yeah, there's one there. And then you've got that little dark cog there. Is that, oh yeah, you've got all the, and it makes you look more, makes you search out for it. So it's a good thing to work in odd numbers. And it's just a rule of thumb. But it's all right saying, oh yeah, you're just working the rule of threes. But what is the rule of threes? And it's balance. It's creating that balance. So it's drawing the eye right the way through the project, which is a really cool thing to do. And then you could go on and you could add in a couple of little pipes here and there if you wanted to. But I'm actually quite happy with that frame as it is. And you can add to it if you like. If you win it, you can add to it. I won't be offended at all. In fact, I'd be delighted. So you can just go in and start to add different bits. But that started live as a blue plastic frame. And we're now, looks rusty and patina, and we've done all that bit. So let me just bring in one of the tins that I did. And I'll show you how I coloured the tin as well, because I'm just going to put all these little bits away. So don't throw anything away. Yeah, if my husband was here now, I'd be like, no, he can't say anything because he's a worse hoarder than I am. Terrible. Drives me crazy. Drives me crazy. Right, so to do the tin, I'll find one that's a little bit more open. Because we've used alcohol ink to colour the tin, it means that you're not creating a thick layer because it's a liquid. And I know paint's a liquid, but it has a structure to it. So to colour the tins, let me just find one this one here like this. I did it differently to the ones that I've done before. So let me just show you how I coloured the tin, because I used some alcohol markers, and it doesn't matter what brand they are. I use Ink Lily because that's the brand that I choose to use. But any of them. So I got a couple of neutral browns, like a lighter one and a darker one, and then a couple of blue greys. Now we talked about when you add grey and it creates a tone, it knocks the colour back. That's what I wanted. I didn't want it bright and vibrant. I didn't want it to look like wood grain, which we've done with the previous fairies because she's not in the woodland. And I just wanted to do it slightly differently. So you can still go ahead and do your, just put your colour down like that. Okay, so just scribble on it. The great thing about alcohol as a colouring medium is that it will move what's underneath it. So if you don't like it, first of all, hand sanitizer takes it off, which is good. But secondly, it means that if you think, oh no, I don't really like that bit, you can change it. And then all I did was go in like this. See if I've got the right colour. It's a slightly darker one. And just go in and just use the chisel end, and I'm sure most of you will have some form of alcohol marker because they were a massive craze, weren't they, a few years ago. They are. I love colouring. That's my favourite colouring medium is alcohol markers, I have to say, although I am falling in love with watercolour a bit because it's quicker. But I do love alcohol markers. So I'm just going in, I'm using the chisel end, and I'm not doing that in rows. I am literally moving my pen around. So I'm getting little blobs and it will expand. So the ink will travel slightly. If you've ever used alcohol ink on Yupo, it's a little bit like that, but more controlled. So it moves. You can use it with a felt. You know, if you're using the Ranger alcohol ink out of a bottle, you can use it on a felt, on a handle, on an applicator. But you will find that you get thicker areas and thinner areas. Whereas doing it with a pen, I find you can move it a little bit more easily. So we're doing this. Then I'm going to go in with a blue grey because I want that bluey look that you get, that little bit of extra, and it's moving the brown underneath. So it won't damage the nib. We can just literally pull that colour out afterwards just by scribbling on a piece of scrap paper. But it just moves the alcohol underneath, and you never know what you're going to get, and every single tin will be completely different, which is fantastic. Because if you are making to sell, you could do them as like special editions. So it could be, you know, if you make 10 tins to sell, it could be 1 of 10, 2 of 10, etc., etc., like you get with the artists when they do prints. That would be a really cool thing to do. And by all means, go ahead and make and sell as many as you like. I'll be delighted if you could get your money back. Absolutely. And I think it's something a little bit different. I think that's, you know, it's not your box standard die cutting, is it? It's a little bit more than that. So that's how I would colour the tin, like so, and then leave it to dry and then maybe put another layer on. And then on the inside, you're going to use your nested dies to be able to create those layers. So inside here, it's the pictures. So if I just grab this paper pack here, and I'll just choose a few of these. Let me just find a few of the same. This one will do. There we go. Over there. So when you're doing it with your dies, just to go over this, you're going to take your nested rectangle dies. This and your cogs. So we're going to start and we're going to cut. Bear with me 1 minute. That's just fallen on the floor. I need to get it. Coming back. There we go. Right. So you're always going to start with your largest rounded corner rectangle, and you're going to decide where you want to place that. So let's say I wanted to place it there, for example. Let me just get some tape so I can actually physically do it for you. So you would tape this into place and you would run it through your die cutting machine, if you can find the end of your tape. then it splits. Come on. This is why I don't do tape. But sometimes you just have to. Right, so I would, see, split. Glue that in place there, okay? And then I would run that through my die cutting machine. So let's do that. And I'm making sure that I'm lined up straight like that, okay? And the things with these little thin dies is that sometimes when you put a lot of pressure on it, or the machine puts a lot of pressure on it, it can make them bow slightly. So you don't get that straight edge. If you're getting that, the best tip I can give you is when you put it on your die cutting plates, put it on at an angle like that, because then it hits the corner and it takes the pressure off that flat edge at the top. So it means that they don't bow. It's the same with any nesting dies like that, because they haven't got a solid center to hold that frame in place. You put it through on an angle, so you put it through like that, even though it's straight on your cardstock. It means that the rollers hit there first, then it's spread out more, and then it spread out more all the way down, so you don't get that bending of those dies. It's the nature of the beast. It's the way it is. You know, you put something thin that doesn't have a stable center, it's going to want to flex. So once you've done your first layer, what I then do is remove that piece of card, and that one is going to stay solid. Then I take my next piece and just line it up like that. Okay, so we're lining this up now, and we're making sure that this is lined up perfectly. That little bit of tape that's still there will hold it in place there. But then I take a little piece of tape, and it's reusable tape, so it's not like we're just, you know, throwing it all away. And just take a little bit of this, and I tape the top. So I take the top layer together. One, it gives me a chance to make sure that it's straight, and two, it holds it in place. And then at this point, you're going to take your nested die. So your smallest one will be in the back one. So you've got a solid back one, which is this one. And then your next one will have the smallest of your dies in there. And as you come forward, that aperture will become bigger. So you start to look into a tunnel. So I'm going to line that one up in there. Let's just run this one through, and then you can see what I'm talking about, because it's easier to see than it is to... Oh, I'm having one of those days today where I'm dropping everything. That's my body telling me that I need to eat. That's what it does when my sugar levels are low. Right, so let's get this one through. So again, I've got two layers now, but the die is only cutting through one, because I've got the aperture of the original one, okay? And then I'm going to put that through there. And just keep your nested dies on magnetic sheets. It's easier. You can see if one's missing, and it just keeps them all nice and flat. And then we'll grab this. And then you've got your second layer. So now I'm going to take that one out. Like that. Okay, so I've now got that bit. Now what I then do is open this up, keep the die in place, take your second one, so the one that you've literally just cut, keep the die on the first one, and then take your next piece of paper, which I've put somewhere safe now. Melanie, you've only just moved that. Where have you put it? Use there underneath. It's either underneath, behind, or on the floor normally. So I've found it now. So I've now got our next piece, and you're going to do exactly the same thing like that. Okay, so you're then going to use your next one up. So let's just do that so that you can see that bit, and then we'll move on to an art journal page, because I want to get that in as well if I can. Right, so we've now got this bit. So I'm going to position that, and it doesn't matter if it's not bang on central, because it's clockwork and it's moving and it doesn't matter. Right, so now I'm going to turn that over, pop that one on there. And I do 4 layers in my tin, but you can do as few or as many as you like. What I would say is just be aware that on the back of each layer, you're going to need to put foam tape. So you need to allow for the width of that foam tape. We use quite a narrow one. So quite a narrow foam tape. And then the depth of it is entirely up to you. But just be aware that when you're cutting apertures into your different layers, that you are at some point going to have to put foam behind them. So I do 4, and then what I'm doing is I'm taking away, so I'm taking that piece out, and then I would take the back piece of card away and keep that die in the same place. So rather than trying to line up the die again, you're lining up your pieces of paper, and that is much quicker. And it's, you know, things like this just come to you. It's not something that you necessarily discover the first time you do a tin. And then after I'd done the first one, I was like, okay, there's got to be a quicker way. And then you work out what the quicker way is. So it's changing all the time, which is fine. And then these bits, you're definitely not going to throw away, because we're going to cut these down in a minute, and we're going to do something with these bits as well, which is cool. So you will end up then with, and you can see how these just all fit perfectly because we use that technique with the die. So then if I take these off here, keep that tape, you've then got all these little bits as well. Think about using these in your projects as well. Don't just think about, oh, well, I've got to do this and I've got to do that. Don't save anything. Don't save anything. Save everything. Don't throw anything away. Oh, Melanie. Hell yeah. The older I get, the worse it becomes. Right, so we should have a solid one somewhere. Okay, maybe not. Well, let's just grab one of these. This will do. Oh, here we are. There we go. Right, so I've now got, that's the piece that's going to go in the back of the tin, okay? Then the next layer is going to have foam tape on, and it's going to lift up. And because you've done that technique with your dies, every layer will line up perfectly. Then you need to start small at the back, because otherwise, if you start with a big one and you put a small one over the top, it covers over the bigger one. So you're thinking about the distance. So this is your back layer. So the further away, the smaller it's going to be. The closer it gets towards you, the bigger it's going to become. And that will work, and that will give you all your layers. And like I say, it doesn't matter if they're not bang on. So that one's slightly higher, that one's slightly lower. Quite like that. And it means that every time it's slightly different. And then you start to build your composition inside that tin. So you imagine that the frame now, this is the outside where we added the pipes. These are all your layers going back. So you're looking right into that tin, and then you just build it forward. Excuse me. There's no difference in doing a card than doing a tin. You're still doing your mats and layers. You're still cutting your apertures out. You're still creating that story. You're just doing it within a tin. The other thing I would say to you, if this is your first tin that you're ever going to do, is get yourself a nail file and just sand back the layers. So I put my foam tape on first and then I sand back. And the reason I do that is because that foam tape gives me a little bit more rigidity and stability. And then you're just literally going to just sand off the edges, right? And that's because the die, this is just for the bits that are going into the tunnel bit. The die fits perfectly to make the piece of paper go inside this section. Look, fits perfectly in there. But because you've got this little ridge, that metal is folded over so it's not sharp, you need to be able to get that underneath that ridge. Don't cut it, you'll cut too much off. Just literally take a nail file and you are literally just taking off a fraction. And then don't be scared of taking this and pushing it into a tin, because it works fine. Let's see if I've got an empty tin somewhere, or an empty-ish tin. Maybe. Yeah, like that. So if I do this now, and push that in, I can get it underneath there, and then I can tuck that in. And this card is a good enough quality for it not to crease. So don't be scared of bending that tin. This is a really good one to show you. So you can see here I just use the rectangles, and it looks different to if you use the cogs. And you could do a mixture of both if you wanted to, like that. It's up to you. They're your tins. Just have a play. There's no rules. If you're gonna paint your tin, absolutely you can paint your tin, but just be aware that you will have to varnish it. And every layer you add, the tighter that closure is going to get. So if you're going to make it for yourself and it's always going to be open, perfect, absolutely. Just do exactly what we did with the frame. And the reason for that is because we're using the hybrid acrylics, and the hybrid acrylics will go on any surface. I would absolutely sand my tin back a little bit just to give it that key, because that's super smooth. But apart from that, everything will be exactly the same. So I hope that helps with that question. Right, so I'm just going to pop these to one side, and I'm going to grab my media book. Check me out with my mixed media book. Tell you, I have a book now, a proper book. So I'll just show you what I did on the shows, in case you missed the shows, because not everybody can watch all the time. So I'm just going to keep all these little bits. I'm going to get rid of all my pens. I'm trying to keep everything organised. Yeah, trying is the operative word there. Right, so this is my fairy book, and most of you will have seen a lot of this before, so I'll skip through. We've got Carefree Fairy, we've got Loving Fairy, and then we went on to Fearless Fairy. So I did this page on the show, and I thought this is a really nice one just to show you how you can get a different look. Now, this book is brilliant because it opens flat, but I also have to be aware that I've got lots of stuff on these pages. So it's never gonna, if I try and stamp on this or stencil, I'm not gonna get a good finish. It's always going to be lumpy bumpy. So what I do is work in a different pad, cut it out and stick it in. No, that's not what you're supposed to do if you're a proper art journaler, but I'm not a proper art journaler yet. I'm still learning. So I'm just, and I know what I'm like. If I do one page in a book that I don't like, it'll put me off. I know it's my thing. And I know it's not necessarily right, but I know what I'm like. So I've got all sorts of books like this that have got lots of little bits of stuff in that I've done on different shows, stamping shows, colouring shows, all sorts of stuff. So I just pick myself a random page. So this one will do. And the stencils that I've used in every single one of the releases so far were some that I cut on my Scan and Cut. So I'll just go through a few of these with you. If you bought the stencils USB from us about a month ago now, 3 weeks, a month ago, I can't remember, then there will be something on there that you can use as well. But these were just some stencils that I just did with the Scan and Cut. So I created a circle frame. So I had one circle on top of the other, one on top smaller than the one underneath it. Took it into Canvas Workspace and divided it, because the Scan and Cut sees a circle on top of a circle. We wanted to see a circle frame. So I divided it, and that gave me a frame. And once you've got a frame that's been divided, you can then weld it. So I just changed the size of the circle, and the only bit that I created was that bit there, this bit. So just this section here. And then I duplicated that, rotated it, welded it, rotated it a different way, welded it, and ended up with this whole circle thing going on. This one, which is a bit more difficult to see, is the rectangle dies. So the nesting dies, I've used them just to create a stencil like that, which is quite nice. And actually you can use a couple of stencils at the same time if you want. So we'll do that. This was just one that I designed in Canvas. So it's just a case of playing around, or any stencils that you've got. You know, if you're into your mixed media already, you'll probably have loads of different stencils. I'm going to use a square one. I'm actually going to use this bit of it, like that. And then I'm going to add a little bit of this one in, just to add a little bit of texture onto there. So let's have a play around and see what we come up with. Cadence Stencil Spray is brilliant, I have to say. It's a really fine spray. Again, don't buy it today. Buy it when it's on offer at the weekend, because we're doing a weekend of Cadence. So what I'm going to do is it's a light spray. So just really, really light. You don't need very much at all. Don't go mad. Just a very light spray. And it's like a hairspray. It's super, super fine. And I'm going to put this down here first. I'm going to put that one down. And then I'm going to stick this one over the top like that. And I didn't plan this, I was just like, right, let's just do what we're going to do. I had no idea what we're going to do today. We knew we were going to do something like this, but you never know until you try it. And that's the great thing. That's why I love it. And I was never like that. I've always been like, oh no, I need to know what it's going to look like when it's finished. And then I was always disappointed because it never looked like I thought it was going to look like. But actually, over time, you get used to that. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, we'll just go with it. And I was talking to Leonie the other week and she said something really interesting. She said the thing that got her past that hurdle of just going straight into a book was somebody said to her, never be afraid to make mud. And mud comes when you've added so many colours together that it just, the layers and the layers just become muddy. And that's okay, because then you can add other stuff on top of it. Don't be afraid of not getting it right every single time. It's okay just to have a play and see what you come up with. That's what crafting's about. You know, if nobody ever tried grinding down plastic and melting it at high temperature, we wouldn't have embossing powder. You know, just have a play. There's no pressure from anybody. Just sit and enjoy the process. And then I'm just going in. I've got a blending brush. Love a blending brush rather than a sponge applicator. Could never get my head around sponge applicators. Never worked. Used to drive me crazy. Blending brushes, love them. And they're washable and they dry really quite quickly as well. So I'm just going in. I'm picking up a little bit of tea dye. This is Tim Holtz Distress Oxide. So I'm just adding it in. I'm not doing a solid colour everywhere. And don't forget, I've got another stencil underneath this as well. So I've done that with tea dye. And now I'm going to go in with a little bit of one of his new colours, which is Uncharted Mariner. It's lovely. It's very lovely. Look at that colour. It's just beautiful. And I'm going to grab one of my smaller blending brushes. And I'm picking up the smallest amount of ink, literally. And then I'm going onto the plastic of the stencil. And I'm just going to go in and add a little bit of that colour just through here. So if you're not used to using paints and stuff like that, start with something that's familiar, like an ink pad. And I found that really helped. It's like when I first went on air with Distress Crayons, and I'm thinking, I have no idea really what I'm doing with these, but I watched Tim Holtz, and the more I used them, the more ideas I got, the more I understood the product and how it worked, the better it became. And I ended up absolutely loving them. They're great fun. And I see he's just brought out some watercolour pencils, so that's the next thing on the list. But it's a familiar, you know, it's familiar. The colours are familiar. Pink raspberry, tea dye, walnut stain, you know, all those are familiar words to us as crafters. And I've no idea what this is going to look like underneath, because remember, I've got that rectangular stencil under there as well. And I love this bit because you're like, oh, I really don't know what it's going to be like. But that's the fun. And that would never have been me at all. And going to Turkey to the Cadence Academy just changed all that. It just took because I wasn't in control of a lot of the stuff. You know, you're doing acrylic pours and you're doing resin pours and you have no idea where that resin or that paint is going to go. So you just have to give into it. And it's so liberating, I can't tell you. Right, so let's see what this looks like now. So I've got that stencil. And then I can take this one off now, and this is going to give us a completely different look. So now we've got this, which is quite cool and a nice starting point. I love that. So I can then take this again. In fact, let's take the square one again, and I can put this back over here like that. And I can just go in, if I just use that paler brush again, and I'm just going to pull that colour. So I'm not adding any more ink at this moment in time. I'm just pulling what's left behind on this stencil. Just blending that really softly over here. And you'll get more of it in some areas and less in others, depending on where you've put the ink on your stencil, but that's all right too. So I'm now just literally going to go over that like so, like that. Okay, so I've now got layers. It's starting to build those layers now, and I'm liking that a lot. So I'm going to go in with this stencil now, and I'm just going to put a little bit of stencil spray on the back of here, So that's all you need, tiny amount. And I'm just going to pick a different colour. So what colour shall we have? I don't know. No, Andrew, not red. I'm not doing red. Let's do some Stormy Sky. And a little bit of Blueprint Sketch, because they're two nice blues. And I want to bring the blue. So if I'm using this blue here, I want to start to bring this in a little bit. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of Stormy Sky and a little bit of Blueprint Sketch. Look at that for a blue. That's lovely. Right, so let me pick up, and I want the tiniest amount. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of that. And now I'm just going to go random with this stencil. So I'm going to just knock a little bit of that blue off like that, and then just go wherever. I'm not following the line of the stencil. I am literally just adding little bits here and there. And like I say, I have no idea what it's going to look like. But I know it'll work because I'm using the right colours. So I'm using the colours. These are a little bit kind of cog-like, but a little bit more florally, just in their shape and their appearance. So I have no idea what it's going to look like, but I'm just going to do it, and then we'll find out together, won't we? This is the fun bit. There's nothing better than having a day where you just sit and play and get all your old products out, all your ultra thick embossing enamels out, even get your melt pot out and do all this new stuff with old products. And then I'm just going to bring this over here and add a little bit over here. And remember, I'm going to cut this page down slightly, but it was funny because I was doing the 2 Red Robin stamps the other day on TV when we launched our first set of 2 Red Robins stamps. And I was working in a book like this, and a customer emailed in and said, do you always work on a larger space? And the answer is no, I don't always, but I do like it because it doesn't contain my creativity. I can go anywhere that I want now on that page. And I'm not kind of restricted, I think is probably the best word to use. So I really like that now. I'm quite happy with that. I think it looks really quite cool. So what we can now do is go in and add our other elements. So the bits that were left behind, you know, the bits that were left behind from here. And I haven't got my trimmer with me, so I'll have to just cut it and make the amend. So I'm just going to use, and this will not be a straight line at all. I need my Caterpillar trimmer. And I'm just going to start to just cut rectangles of this out like so. So we're just going to go up here like this. And I might have that one there. And then I might have this here or there. Doesn't really matter. You just start to play around with your compositions. So let's just focus on one little area here. So let's say we're going to do this bit round here. I've then got my cogs, remember, that came out of my die cut brain. Sometimes I have to just go, hang on a minute, my words have just gone, they'll come back in a minute. What, brain fog? Right, so now I'm going to add in some pipes. So we can now start to look at where do we want these pipes. Well, we've got a curve there on that corner. So let's replicate that curve with a little bit of pipe that goes up there like so. Like that. Okay, so we've now got our little pipe there. Then we can take another pipe and we could have another one going over there like that. So I'm now creating this little space here. And this is why I like to make a bigger background, because then if I moved it over and turned it round, it would look slightly different again. Then I might want to have a few little light bulbs coming down from here. So I can have that hanging from underneath the pipe. And then I can have one over the top of the pipe like that. So we're now creating that extra little bit of detail. And then I could take these and have them coming down from the end of the pipe like that. That's quite cool. Don't be scared of just cutting lots of bits out and just playing around. And then I might have that one just coming up there like that. So I'm now creating like these corners. Then I need to have some more cogs, I think. So let's bring in some of these rusty cogs here. And because we're using a similar colour palette that we've used all the way through, we can absolutely get away with that. And because we've got different textures, so you can see the difference. They're exactly the same die, but with one, Stephanie's popped all the bits out, and with that one, I kept them all in. So it's just a case of playing and seeing what you like, because it's your project, you're in charge of it. And then I'm going to tuck that one underneath there like that. And I might find another slightly open one just to go under there at the top. So it's just a case of playing around and positioning. And I like to create balance. I like something that balances, not necessarily symmetrical, but just so that when you look at it, it looks cohesive as a whole piece. And then I might bring in some of these more metallic cogs here, and I might have that on top of that pipe. So I'm changing it slightly now, but that's all right, because that's what we do. Just don't glue it down, then you're good to go. And then I might have another one like that, but maybe slightly smaller if I've got one, maybe there. And that one might go underneath the pipe, or it might go over the pipe but underneath the light bulbs. And then you just start to build your picture and play. Then I can bring in our fabulous Fearless Fairy, and she can be stepping over the pipe. You've got the cog behind her, but she's actually stepping over the pipe, which is quite cool as well. Just put that in there. And we're now just building up our picture. You could have her, if you use a smaller one, where, smaller fairy here. There's never enough compartments. No matter how big a box I get, always need more compartments. You could have her behind the frame or walking through the frame. So you could have her coming out of the cog like that if you wanted to, or you could have the smaller one there. It's you know, it's entirely, it's your choice, isn't it? You decide what you like and what you don't like. But I think this is this is where it goes from die cutting it out and sticking it in a tin to being much more creative, because you're making the pieces, and that's the great thing about it. And then you could just add in some little fixings here and there, some extra little bits of pipe, maybe just coming out of here, another little cog, you know, some of the little teeny tiny cogs, just building that up. So you've now got your little section there, and you could do the whole page like that if you wanted to, but it's just building up those little elements and making something creative with it, something a little bit different. So that's that. So I would really like, if it's okay with you guys, just to show you in the last 5 minutes or so, the next fairy. You'll get a sneak peek. Now then, if you are coming to our retreat in Doncaster, I don't know if any of you are, but if you are, don't buy the Enchanted Fairy, because that's part of the retreat class. All right, that's the only time you'll ever see me say don't buy it, unless I don't think you need it. But you do need it because it's fabulous. Right, so I'm going to keep in all my little cogs, etc., and I will finish off that art journal page, and then on the next class I can show you what we've done. Right, let me pop that out of the way. See, I'm getting like Stephanie's desk now, just stuff everywhere. I say Stephanie's desk. If you'd seen mine yesterday, well, not yesterday, day before. Right, what was I going to do? Show you the fairy. So where is she? Here. Well, she's not a fairy, she's an elf. She's a proper elf. And I have coloured the artwork for this. Let me just grab the original for you so you can see what she's going to be like. Now, she's big on here because I have to colour her in a big scale and then shrink her down. But this is the Enchanted Elf. So she has her red and green stripy tights. She has this long hat that comes around with a little bell on the end of her there, and then all little bells around here. And I will read you her story so that you understand what her story is. So the Enchanted Elf appears at the same time every year in the woodland. All the inhabitants become very excited about her arrival, and there is something truly magical about her. She uses her magical powers to fill the woodland with frost and snow and changes it into a winter wonderland. The bells on her shoes can be heard very faintly. No one has ever seen her, but they never question if she is real, as the beauty she leaves behind only appears when she is near. You are, and whoever you meet along your journey, always leave a bit of magic and sparkle along the way. So you've got the fairy. I love her. I think she's just lovely. Lauren, the way she's drawn her is just magnificent. And this is what it will look like as a reflection. So we've got 9 sets because you get the larger one and the smaller one. And she is perfectly sized to go in that tin. Some of them, I've made Lauren scale her down a little bit more because she is an elf and she flits in and out, and I wanted that to reflect that. You then get these dies, which are your ovals. So we're bringing in another fundamental set here that you can use to create the apertures, because I thought this looked quite a nice Christmas bauble shape, but you can also use it all year round. Then you have your snowflakes. Now you'll be glad to know that these are all on one plate. So it's super easy to run them through. So you will take your die, you position it over your reflection, and all the snowflakes will cut out in one go. Thank goodness for that, because I can't be doing with lots of little bits of dies that you've all got to tape in place. It drives me crazy. So you've got your snowflakes. Then you have your festive foliage, and this is lovely because you've got a lovely wreath as a circle. You've got a header here that is just fabulous, and another header, and these fit perfectly inside the tin to go up at the top and the bottom of all your apertures. Then you've got a fabulous corner, and you've got like an arch as well, but the detail, I mean, the number of detail lines in that die is ridiculous. It's just crazy. But again, they're all on one plate. So you literally take your reflection, put that down, cut it out, done. That's your fairy, so you can see the different size of her. So if I put my little finger next to her, she's quite tiny. She's probably, ruler, let's have a look. She's less than 3 inches in height, and the bigger one is 90 centimetres, so just under 4 inches. But it's lovely. She fits beautifully inside of the tins. Very excited about starting on this one. Just got to get through the pick of the week next week first. Then we have these now, Enchanted Companions, and these are lovely. So you've got the 3 deer, and I love this because you've got a fawn, and then you've got 2 stags, but one of them is led down and one of them is stood up. So one of them can be gazing at the moon, and then the other one can be coming in from the other side, and then you've got one that lies down as well. So these are going to be really lovely to work with. And then this one is your A Whisper of Winter, and this is the owl that comes in carrying that lovely foliage. Again, 2 different sizes, but on one swift plate. And it's carrying in all the little embellishments that she needs to turn the woodland into a winter wonderland. So that's the dies. And these, for me, are going to be about creating a tin that becomes an heirloom, that comes out every Christmas, that you pass down to your family members. So all my family that live in different households are all going to get a Christmas tin this year, because I think it's a lovely thing. You know, you've got all the decorations that your kids used to do that go on the Christmas tree, and you bring them out year after year, or the special ones that you invested a bit of money in and you bought something really pretty. I think that's great. And then the backgrounds I've chosen, I love these because they are all slightly different, and I think that's really important that we have a nice mix. So we've got some that are a little bit, if I say Tim Burton-esque, you'll probably know what I mean, really quirky. I love these houses because they're almost like, they're like mushrooms, but it's got the same little hat on it. It just moves fabulous. And you've got a little teeny tiny red robin just on there. So that's one, I love that. That just makes me smile. It reminds me a bit of The Grinch. If you've ever watched that movie, which I've watched hundreds of times because it's one of Alice's favourites. But you've got this one here, which is just fantastic. Then you've got this one where you're you've already got your deer and you've got the sleigh in there and your Christmas tree, but you've got this fabulous moon in the background. So you could literally do that part, or you could do that part. It's lovely, really lovely, and quite neutral in colour. Then you've got full on Christmas. So this for me is after she's been into the woodland and she's cast a spell and made everything frosty and snowy, she's here. She stood right at the front of this picture and you can't see her, and she just turns around and just admires her work, and then she disappears again until next year. So there's a whole story going on in my head while I'm picking these, but this is lovely because you've got those beautiful icy blues. Imagine that as a little Christmas card. Doesn't even have to be in a tin. That part, a little Christmas card, and that owl just flying out. That would look phenomenal. Then you've got this one. We had to do a gingerbread house and a Quaker gingerbread house. And again, quite Tim Burton-esque, but I love that. I love that it's different. It's unusual. Then we've got the snowman. Again, quite quirky with a little bird just landing here, but I love that moon. That moon's going to feature a lot. I think it's just fantastic. Then you've got more of a traditional gingerbread house with the path going up and the lollipop. That just made me smile because she'll just work perfectly with all of these. And then this is where she starts. This is her house that appears. So there's an opening in the woodland where the fairies never really go, but because they know it's super special, and they've never seen her, but they hear her and they know what a difference she makes to the woodland. So this is where her house, and you can see it's just started to have frost put onto it. Like the whole story is just, I love it. And then we've got this one where she's all nice and warm and cuddly outside, and all the fairies are inside, and nobody tries to peek to see her because they know that if they do, she might not come back. So they're all huddled together in this house waiting for her to arrive. And those are all your different backgrounds that go with her. It was a lot of fun with that. And there will definitely be a Zoom class with that as well. This one is coming out on the 3rd of October. It's a one-day special, Monday night at 6 p.m. So thank you very much once again for joining the class. Andrew's asking me to pick a number between 1 and 12. I will have number 4, please. Faye Twiddle. Faye, can you email me, please, at mel@highlightcrafts.com. Yep. And we will send you out the frame. And can I have number 8 as well, please, Andrew? Joan Venison. I'll send you out this tin. So you've got a tin. Where's Joan? Joan Benison? Give me a wave if you can hear me, Joan. Joan Benison? Give me a wave, Joan. Don't think she can hear me. I'm going to send you this tin. So I need, there you go. Joan, I need you to email me, darling, please. mel@highlightcrafts.com, and we'll send you a tin out. And going forward, every class that we do with Quirky Bird, whatever we make, we'll send out. Okay? Thank you for your company. I've thoroughly enjoyed it this morning. If you do have a scan and cut and it's still in the box, 3 classes tonight. So 5:30 till 6:30 for the SDX, and CM series is 7 till 8. If you email info@highlightcrafts.com, they will send you all the details you need for the free class. And tonight we're going to make aperture cards. So I'm going to teach you how to make your own aperture cards and do some other bits and pieces as well, which is exciting. Right, I'm going to go and tidy all this lot up, make some room for David to come and do his Zoom class this afternoon, and I will see you all very soon. Thank you so much, as ever. Lots of love to you all. Stay safe, and I will see you very soon.